Okay, what's up, everybody? Good morning. Welcome to a Thursday edition of Morning Scone presented by Brock, the Baton Rouge Orthopedic Clinic, Hudco Roofing, HudcoRoofing.com, Restored Motions, RestoredMotions.com, and ProCharge EV, ProChargeEV.com. Okay, y'all, a day that many of you had waited for. We wondered if it would come, but it came on Wednesday. LSU fires Matt House, Robert Steeples, Kerry Cooks, Jimmy Lindsey, four coaches on the defensive staff that will not return in 2024. Talked a good bit about it throughout the day on a lot of different platforms on Wednesday, but of course we'll talk about it here as well. Give you a short how it all came to pass and a short list of candidates as well as I'm hearing. So, y'all, the one thing that is pretty clear to me, the more people I talk to on Wednesday, is when they teed the ball up and kicked it off against Wisconsin, Matt House was going to return next year, unless if he got an NFL job, which is something I said a lot here. You know, your best path to get him out of here would have been he leaves for an NFL job. But man, that game going the way it did, and then a lot of what transpired after. And I'm not saying it's solely this, but I think a lot of people, you probably saw you might have seen the video that Jacques Doucet posted. It was a video from the field after the bowl game, and Matt House is down on the field, and he goes up to the group of defensive linemen, and he's kind of dapping them up and congratulating them, and Mekhi Wingo won't shake his hand, and then kind of awkward turns away from him, and there's this sort of awkward smile from Matt House, and it's like, and I'll tell you, I didn't see it. I had that sent to me from someone fairly influential, and the more people I talked to, the more clear it became that video circulated among a lot of decision makers around LSU. And that's not to say that Matt House got fired because of that video. It's to say after that, a lot of people started asking questions to say, wait, that number 18 who was injured, rehabbed to come back to play the bowl game when a lot of people are opting out of bowl games? That guy had that? Like, what's going on? And so they started asking questions. And I think what became really clear is just how much of a disconnect there was between a lot of the players on the defensive side of the ball and Matt House. I mean, if you saw after the news yesterday, Braden Swinson, Harold Perkins, there was a lot of guys who took to social media to sort of subtweet the situation, basically. Anyway, and I think ultimately that's when things really, really shifted into overdrive. And on Tuesday night is when I think the decision was made. And then Wednesday morning, we all got the announcement, obviously. So, I'm telling you, y'all, this decision was not made before that bowl game. He was going to come back. There were going to be, I've told y'all for weeks, if y'all have been here on the show, I told you for weeks there were going to be defensive staff changes. And I told you minimum 2. And I was fairly confident Robert Steeples and Jimmy Lindsey weren't going to be back. At least not in there. Like, Steeples, they were going to replace Steeples. And obviously now they replace Cooks as well. And Jimmy Lindsey, I don't know if he's physically able. I'm certain Jimmy Lindsey wants to coach again. And from all I understand, he's had a fantastic recovery, and that is the most important thing. But I think from LSU standpoint, there was an uncertainty there, so you had to move on. So I knew those 2, minimum. And there was the possibility of more, and ultimately Kerry Cooks and Matt House ended up going as well. So Okay, we can talk about who's next. I gave out the names that I heard for DC: Blake Baker, DJ Durkin, um, Tony Gibson from NC State, uh, Lance Guidry from Miami, and then the two long shots are Bobby April and Bob Diaco. So if you got any questions, fire away. I do think the Corey Raymond thing gets done. And they are pushing to bring back Bo Davis. But as I told you yesterday, there's there's a big financial hurdle there because Bo Davis makes $1 million a year at Texas as their defensive line coach, and LSU would have to pay him, 1.3, 1.5 in that neighborhood to get him here. And it's not to say Texas couldn't pay him that, but if he gets that kind of bump and the opportunity to coach his alma mater, he would come back. But I don't know if LSU is going to pay $1.5 million, for a D-line coach. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. All right, Brett Guidry, good morning. Jacob Thompson, more Matt. Glad BK fired Cook Steeples. They're a big reason why the secondary was terrible this season. Let's bring back the Godfather of DBU. Yeah, I think that gets done. I'll throw this caveat because I always do when we talk about coaching searches. Until the ink is dry on the paper, they send out the press release, and the coach is at a podium. It never feels like it's really done. But when you have both sides motivated to get a deal done, and in this instance, I think both LSU and Corey Raymond want to get this done. I think it will. Pat Huseman, good morning. Jesse, how soon do you think LSU assistant coaches will be named? I think you could start to hear some of that leaked end of this week, beginning of next week. It sure seems like they want to move quickly because, the February signing period is now less than a month away. And you want to have this wrapped up so when you start bringing in players on their official visits throughout January, that you have your staff in place. So I don't think this is something that they want to wait until after February to get this done. I think they want to move quickly. James McKinney, Jesse, how about Will Wade beating Michigan? We talked about that over the weekend. Wacky Chris, good morning. If you had to rank the DC candidates from most to least likely, who would you have and who would your top three be? Of the ones I mentioned, I think in that order, Blake Baker, DJ Durkin, and probably Tony Gibson. Taylor Hudson, morning, Matt. I feel bad for Jimmy Lindsey since he didn't meet the coach this year. Was there any conversation of him staying on in an analyst role? Is it bad optics for LSU and BK to fire him? That's it's a good question. It's a fair question. What I will tell you is LSU has done right by Jimmy Lindsey in providing him and his family with everything that they need. And whether he's an analyst next year or not, he's going to get his buyout, which is north of $700,000. So LSU's done right by Jimmy Lindsey, and I think Jimmy would tell you that. But you're right. Also, it's disappointing. I mean, he never got to coach a game. Cody Kibido, morning, Matt. Understand why you let Lindsey go. I feel bad because never got to see him coach. Yeah. Randall Offreg, morning, Matt. Why haven't BK made an offensive coordinator hire? Do you have a timeline? I don't on the OC. And quite honestly, I think the reason is because Brian Kelly wasn't thinking he was going to have to hire an OC or a DC this year. I think he had come to terms with that he was going to retain Matt House, and they had agreed to a contract extension with Mike Denbrock. So those changes came suddenly and unexpectedly. The thing to consider is if they do promote Joe Sloan, and I don't know if they will, but if they do promote Joe Sloan, you will need to hire a tight ends coach because Mike Denbrock coached the tight ends. And the name that I've heard in that situation is Slade Nagel, who was at Tulane with Fritz, and Fritz did not take him to Houston. So Slade Nagel potentially as a tight ends coach is a name I've heard. Jaleel Dean, Matt, I can't believe they actually fired everybody in the defense. I thought if they did fire someone, it would be Matt House. And I'm here to tell you, I will say this with the utmost confidence, unless if Brian Kelly knew all along and just didn't tell anybody, or lied. And I don't believe he did. But I do know there was conversation during the season about making a change. I told you that the buyout during the season was not something that they were interested in doing. Matt House's buyout alone is 3.7 million. There is mitigation in the contract, meaning if Matt House gets a job, the buyout is offset by that dollar amount. But in total, LSU owes nearly $6 million in buyouts to this defensive staff. So you got that much money tied into buyouts, then you have to go hire a new staff. I mean, it's expensive to fire people. Father J.D. Mathurin, morning Scone. On timing, was it intentional to make the move after the portal window closed to retain players? No, I'm telling you. I would have to have Brian Kelly hooked up to a lie detector and pass a lie detector test telling me this was the plan all along for me to believe it. Because everyone I talked to before that bowl game insisted Matt House was coming back unless he went to the NFL. And it changed dramatically on Tuesday when they got back. And by the way, y'all, Brian Kelly's not even here. My understanding is he left the bowl game and went straight to his house in Naples. He did not come back with the team. So Kelly, I think Kelly did all this remotely yesterday. Juan, morning, Matt. How do we find the money to get rid of House? Juan, it's amazing what can happen when you have more motivation. And I think watching what happened on Monday in the bowl game and all of the feeling internally around the program that followed on Tuesday, and then you look around and you see what Ole Miss is doing. It's amazing what can motivate people. Anyway, by the way, something else to keep in mind. I'm starting to hear some whispers also that there's some off the field support staff personnel that might be coming to LSU. That would be really exciting. So keep that under your hat, file that away, because the LSU might, always say, it's never done until it's done, ink's dry, contract signed, press releases out. But LSU may be getting some more exciting news as far as adding support staff personnel as well. Excited to maybe have something else to tell you about that coming up. But I know they are kicking tires on some additional support staff, and one name in particular would be really exciting. Todd Ohms, morning, Matt. I go all in on Minter. That's Jesse Minter from Michigan. Brian Wynn, Eric Wilderotter, can you give a little peek behind the curtain? How many calls are you making on a day like yesterday? Oh, God. Suffice to say, I had an 11 a.m. meeting and then an 11:45 lunch yesterday. The news broke just before 11. I texted our department head and was like, I'm not coming to the meeting. And then even just on the way to that lunch, I had 2 different phone conversations. I had excused myself twice for phone conversations. And then last night after my show, 10 phone calls last night after my show. It's a lot. And the reason is, and I tell you all the time, like, I don't want to be breaking news guy. It's not my objective to be a news reporter. I'm not trying to report news. I just want to be accurate. I don't want to guess. So it's like a lot of times I wink and nod at y'all. Like when I'm telling you the story, I'm telling you the story without telling you the story. Like that's like the crazy thing about when, I talked about Lance Hurd the other day. When people are like, no, he just wants to play left tackle. Yeah, of course he wants to play left tackle, but that's not why he left. Like, I'm not guessing. I'm telling you the freaking story. The kid wanted NIL money. He wanted more than he got his freshman year. LSU wasn't willing to pay him that much because he was going to be a backup again. Dellinger and Frazier most likely returning. They weren't going to sink that resource into a backup offensive lineman. So he went into the portal. He got the number he wanted, and he's leaving. Like, that's why. It doesn't mean he doesn't want to play left tackle, but the reason he's leaving is NIL. And I tell you all that, and then I have people like, oh, man, he just wants to play left tackle. He said it. Some of y'all can't be helped. Brett DeGrow, Trivia Carter, Wendell Norman, Jason H., Brant Roban, morning. Did you hear what Kirby Smart said after the bowl game? Mentioned how crazy, how many times a kid can transfer and opt-outs. Need to have some limitations to it. Thoughts? I disagree with him. Spurge, good morning. Christian, yesterday was a news-heavy day to say the least. If you could pick, would you rather DJ Durkin or Blake Baker? Maybe a little more upside with Blake Baker. But Durkin's a good DC, man. Harbaugh would hire Durkin to be his first DC in Michigan. He's been a DC at Florida. He was DC at Ole Miss. And now he's DC at A&M the last 2 years. Like, Durkin would not be a bad hire, y'all. It's more about you've got to get your roster back up to that level of competitive balance. You get your roster back, and that's why Frank, and they're pushing to bring back Corey and possibly Bo Davis. I mean, look at what this recruiting class is right now and what you're already doing for 2025. And if you had Corey and Bo Davis along with Frank, my God, now your roster is going to start looking like it did when you were rolling again. And you do that with good coaches, yes, you'll be fine. I think there will be. Charlie Cavell, Ben Boudreaux, good morning. Heard a bunch of Harbaugh to the Raiders. Thoughts? I have no idea. Despite how the Kelly, Michigan stuff got twisted, what I said plainly then is I have no idea if Harbaugh has interest in the NFL, and I have no idea, even if he does leave, if Michigan would have any interest in Kelly. So I have no idea. I have no idea anything about the Jim Harbaugh situation. The thing that I said that everybody latched onto is that if Kelly was offered the job, he would take it. And I still believe that. I believe that. If Michigan came to Brian Kelly and offered him their job, I think he would take it. But that's a hypothetical because I have no idea whatsoever if Jim Harbaugh's leaving or if Michigan would have any interest whatsoever in Brian Kelly. And I said that 2 weeks ago, but that got omitted. Truax, what's up, man? Deborah Coward, Bubba Smith, Tommy Primo from Qatar. Okay, Tommy, across the world, man. Welcome on in. David Wallace, Charlie Cavell, Vernell Thomas. It's like a fog has moved on since Matt House and staff hiring yesterday. And I do want to say, look, that's still 4 men who are husbands and fathers. That's 4 families that have to move, 4 kids that have to leave school, leave their house, leave their home, leave their friends. Like, coaching is, you know what you're signing up for, and you're well compensated, but there's still families and there's still people, and it's the only profession where people celebrate someone losing their job. So a little humanity, but from the competitive side, yes, I think it obviously needed to happen. Brian Broom, Ron Amity. Ron Amity said, there you go again, crawfishing, trying to cover your behind for another bad reporting on your part. Ron, you can believe whatever you want, Ron. And all I'm going to say, Ron, is you're watching my show. You're watching my show. So the day you have a show and a lot of people watch you, you're more than welcome to go vet whatever you want and find out. But I'm not crawfishing. I'm telling you flatly, point blank, that going into that football game on Monday, you can choose to believe me or not, Ron, but I'll remind you, you're watching my show. You going into Monday, Matt House was returning, unless if he gotten a job in the NFL. And Tuesday was a very fluid day. Kirk Taylor, Thad Landry, Pete, Quentin Brakebill, How soon will you think Brian Kelly will make defensive hires? Yeah, talked about it a little bit ago. I think they're trying to move quickly because you have the signing day on February and you'll have official visitors, and so they're going to want to get that done sooner than later. Um, I and yesterday was pretty rapid fire after the news came, especially with Corey Raymond and Bo Davis. Um, again, I think Corey gets done. I would be very surprised if it didn't. And we'll see about Bo. It's just, can you make the money work? I mean, are you going to pay it? Are you going to pay? LSU has to decide, are you going to pay your defensive line coach, coordinator money? Chris Keller, good morning. Kirk Taylor. Thank you, Kirk. Kirk's going after Ron Amity. It's okay, Kirk. Look, man, here's the problem. Most people that attack me or criticize me, would they like it? It's just, they don't like my opinion on certain things, so they make up their mind about me, and so they try to amplify anything that's negative. But I just don't care. God bless. Daniel Guidry, Brent St. Germain, Brad Ruiz, chances LSU lands to Michigan, D.C. That would be awesome. That's not a name I heard yesterday. I doubt seriously that's something that is in play right now. But again, you never know with coaching searches until they're done. Rick Kelly, Matt, we need to get Greg McMahon. That's another thing, Rick, too, that Brian Kelly is going to have to decide. Like, one of the real big questions is how they move the pieces on the chessboard. If you want to bring in a full-time special teams coach, remember they retained John Jancic and Bob Diaco, who both coached on the field this year. So do you keep those two as on-field defensive assistants? Remember, if you don't promote Joe Sloan to OC and he remains quarterbacks coach and you bring in an OC, does your OC coach tight ends the way that Denbrock did? If not, then you have to bring in a tight ends coach as well. Do you want a special teams coordinator? Do you want to replace Steeples and Cooks? Or if you bring in Corey Raymond, does he handle the secondary solely? TJ Rushing. TJ Rushing was the other name that I heard as far as a secondary coach. He's on A&M staff right now, playing the NFL. Do you bring in Corey Raymond and TJ Rushing, or is it just Corey? If you don't get Corey, is it TJ? There's a lot of different ways that they'll have to make all the responsibilities work with 10 full-time assistants. Lowdown Sports, good morning from Charleston, West Virginia. All right, Jaleel Dean, a little off topic. I'm going to try not to stay off topic. Sorry, man. Pat Houston, do you think the defensive reset will set back Brian Kelly's 3-year plan? I don't know, Pat. I think, look, the bigger part of this is, can you get your defensive talent back up to par? Because I don't care who you bring in, you got to have players. Now, it's no excuse with the players you had for being as bad as you were, but I don't think we're expecting LSU to have the number one offense in the country again next year, and a Heisman Trophy winner. But you got to get your talent back up defensively. Where was the money raised to pay the buyout? Did Gordon get it done? I don't know if it was Gordon. Who's going to be the OC? I don't know. Joey B19, Eric Wilderwater, do you think the expenses of yesterday's influence who we hire as OC, i.e. Sloan is probably the cheapest option? We get more inclined to go with him. Eric, I think I don't know. There's a couple of ways to look at it. Like, if you're going to lay out the cash to blow out a staff, are you really then going to go cheap on the next hire? Because then why did you waste the money to blow out the staff? That's one way to think of it. The other two is, I mean, you were going to pay Mike Denbrock $2 million, and he's now off the book, so that salary is super competitive regardless for an OC. Cajun Country Morning, not excited about Blake Baker. Would Corey Raymond want to be the DC? That would be incredibly exciting. Corey Raymond wants to be the DC. He will not be the DC. And Blake Baker would be really good. William Moore, Don Tecco, shouldn't the DC have input on hiring position coaches? Different schools of thought on that, Don, but it doesn't always work out that way. Robbie White, maybe they can justify paying Davis more than market because LSU could get an OC on the cheap. Look, here's the thing, man. It's not just like, could you afford, a couple $100,000 extra? Some of it is precedent you set. So if you were to pay Bo Davis $1.5 million, Frank Wilson's going to look at you and go, Cortez Hankton's going to go, you know what I mean? Joe Sloan's going to go, I just coached a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. So it's more, what's the precedent that you are setting with that hire? All right, please smash the like button if you would. Subscribe up to the channel. As always, shout out to Brock, HUDCO. You need an orthopedist, go to Brock. You need a roof, give a shout out to HUDCO, HUDCOroofing.com. Do business with someone you know. All right, I got a phone interview here at 8. I'm going to be on Sirius XM with Jocks FM, and I got Sirius XM at 8:30, and I got to get Drew up and get him out. So we've got a lot to do. So let me do a few more minutes here. Devin Johnson, good morning. Brian Kelly has to get this right for his future at LSU. I'm telling you, man, a lot of these moves are being pushed not only by Brian Kelly. And I think you'd be surprised at how much, the hirings, how much that happens where a coach may say, okay, go vet the candidates and bring me the best options. Let's talk about it. Abner Neal, Juice Williams, bringing Corey, who could out-recruit us? Nobody. Brant Roban, maybe the new DC will have Perkins be relevant in 2024. Y'all saw, did you see Harold Perkins' Instagram story? Just a blank black screen with the thinking emoji at the bottom. Braden Swinson with the kick rocks. If you know, you know. I'm telling you, man, it was... Tuesday was an interesting day. Garrett Petrie, good morning, Uncle Scone. Thoughts on DC from Missouri? Yeah, Blake Baker, talked about him. Coincidentally, Blake Baker and Corey Raymond were both at LSU when Brian Kelly got hired and fired them both. When he kind of blew out the staff. And I think it's an instance where in some of those instances, you throw the baby out with the bathwater. But Blake Baker's done well at Mizzou. It's a good job for him to go cut his teeth as an SEC defensive coordinator. He's done well there at Mizzou. Just got a raise. I think because of the raise he just got at Mizzou, it would cost, I had this conversation last night, and I have a lot of numbers in my head, so sorry if I'm off a smidge, but I think Baker's buyout would be $3 million. So again, you just paid $5.7 million for your whole defensive staff. You'd have to pay Mizzou a $3 million buyout for Baker, which puts you up, over $8 million in buyouts, and then you'd have to hire your new staff. So hiring and firing is expensive. Okay, Joey B19, Crawfish Etouffee, good morning, Barry Johnson. Sorry, y'all, I'm really, really short on time. Adam Parker, Jesse Brown, Joey B19, it can't be because the defense was bad in the bowl game. They have been bad all year. The video had to be the deciding factor. Joey B19, I'll tell you, sometimes you take a month off, you decompress, and you forget how things look, and then you go see how it looked again. You're reminded of how bad it was, and then all this stuff happened. It was a snowball. Monday into Tuesday was a big snowball. Matt Plovital hired Coach O as the D-line coach. Great defensive line coach. I don't think that's happening, though. Does Lane Skidry make sense as DC? Scott, that's one of the names I was told yesterday. Great ties to Louisiana, was at McNeese with Frank, as the head coach at McNeese. He also coached at Nichols and coached at Southeastern, knows the state, all that stuff. DC at Miami this year. I don't know that he's the number one choice, but he was one of the names that was mentioned to me yesterday. Lance Richard, what'd you make of the Harold Perkins tweet? That's exactly my point. I'll tell you, Harold was one of the guys that was at odds with Matt House. Remember Perkins, they tried the switch to off-ball linebacker this year, which did not go well, and did not like the way he was used. Perkins was injured in the bowl game too. I don't know that a lot of people know that. It was a shoulder, elbow. He left with his arm in a sling. I don't know that it's super serious, but there was a lot. There was a lot there, man. There's a lot of frustration. Joel Ensminger, Blake Baker seemed to make a lot of sense. Also, in Brian Kelly, I trust. How does that look to hire possibly two guys you let go 2 years ago in Baker and Raymond? I don't know how it looks, but I've told you that story. When Brian Kelly came in, it was almost just like wholesale changes. Corey Raymond didn't get an interview. It was just same with Tommy Moffitt. I mean, there were great coaches on staff, but it was wholesale changes, and a new coach has a right to do that, and that happens everywhere. So, okay. All right, y'all. I got an interview coming up literally in less than a minute, so I need to bounce. Thanks so much for watching. If you're on YouTube,